downtime last week. And, when our German friend came to town, the Ravens were teetering on extinction last week. And 2 wins, 2 big wins, 2 division wins, a bunch of losses throughout the division, and good tidings ahead as they take on the 8-1 upstart, but troubled at quarterback Dallas Cowboys. Here to talk all things National Football League, one of our favorite guests to have on. It is a really important week in his life because of this Stanford-Cal rivalry thing that goes on. He is the longtime NFL reporter now with BleacherReport.com, and you can follow his journey as well as the Space Needle at Jason Cole, BR on Twitter. We welcome our defending champion back, JC. What's going on, man? Stanford, Cal, I see that you're having a lot of fun with the social media aspects of this, Jason.
Oh, absolutely. You got to take that Kate Scott girl out in California, that Amy Trask person, Mike Silver, Scott Fujita. You got to lay into those people. You got to take them on. Because
Kate Scott, I ran into her the other night. I was with her at the Golden State game Wednesday night. So she's involved in this as well, huh?
Oh yeah, she's a Cal grad. She's one of those evil weenies from Cal that we like to, as we refer to them.
It's an uglier rivalry than people realize outside the Bay Area, right? I mean, there's Alabama, Auburn, and Hatfields and McCoys, and Texas and Oklahoma. But the Stanford-Cal thing, it has that seminal moment that even people like me that, can't name anybody beyond McCaffrey, right? That you look at and you say they hate each other. They really do hate each other.
There's that moment. Unfortunately, I was witness to that moment personally. So,
and you haven't gotten over it.
No. No.
That's what makes it fun for Silver and all these people. You know that, right?
I'll choose my words carefully and say, forget them.
It all begins with an F. Hey, man, speaking of Fs, the Ravens offense was getting an F before the Steelers game. And, at this point, they're in sole possession of first place. I should continue to refer to them as the first-place Ravens because that's what they are. This has been an interesting division. I saw Marvin Lewis up in New Jersey on Sunday night. I watched them get beat on Monday night. I saw the Steelers sort of urinate the game away at home against the Cowboys. Now we get the Cowboys this week. This is an interesting division. No good teams here, no great teams here, but the Ravens are in a unique position here as they have this tough schedule coming up to do some damage and sneak their way into the playoffs in January.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like a lot of things about Baltimore. I just don't love a lot of things about the Ravens. I mean, there's a lot of things where you sit there and you go, good player, not great. Very good player, not great. Offense is playing better, not dangerous. Defense is a little rugged, but suspect. It's like although that's the hesitation you have, I think, with Baltimore, where you look at a team like the Steelers and you go, that team's underperforming. Like where when you have Le'Veon Bell and you have Antonio Brown, you have Ben Roethlisberger, like that's all they're producing right now. And granted, Roethlisberger, played the Ravens coming back off of an injury, but still didn't play very well, and then came back the second game and did not look good at all in that game. So, you look around, Cleveland's not going to do anything. Cincinnati keeps wallowing around, and I think that, Marvin Lewis, as much as I like him, and I think he's done a great job in Cincinnati, I think this may be the end of the road for him. So, with all of that, the Ravens may be the team that's left standing when this is all said and done, and saying, okay, if we can get hot in December, and depending on what the matchups look like, we'll take our chances.
Well, the matchups aren't great, right? I mean, this is the first of many tall tasks for the Ravens, taking on an 8-1 team on the road, getting some guys back. I mean, Doomerville was out there running around this week, feeling like the offensive line's still a mess at this point with Yonda. I saw Alex Lewis on crutches running around the facility on Wednesday as well. But the defensive line and stopping Ezekiel Elliott, if you can do that, and they've done a pretty decent job against the run, they're healthier than they've been on the defensive side in a while, certainly rested with 10 days rest after, I don't want to say an easy win over Cleveland, but they did win by 3 touchdowns. And taking on this 8-1 team that everyone's all hot and bothered about all of a sudden as the best team in the league. And then you have the Romo press conference and the Prescott situation. This has been sort of uncharted waters, I think, for the Cowboys to have a 2-quarterback system. They barely had 1 quarterback most of the time.
Right, and I think that this is, you're always loving this because you're looking ahead going, okay, well, we can trade one of those guys, but they can't do that obviously now. They're going to have to wade through this the rest of the season and hope that Prescott really is as good as they say. But even if he falls, through the floor somehow, like they have a December 1st game against Minnesota, which I think is going to be a huge challenge for them. Maybe not to win the game, but to at least play effectively on offense. I think that'll be a real big test for Dak Prescott. So, we'll see how the Cowboys navigate this. Tony Romo did a really good thing by falling on the sword, yesterday, the way he did, to sort of extinguish the continuing talk about it. But that doesn't mean that's going to go away completely. And if Prescott starts to falter at all, then we're going to see, this whole discussion reemerge very, very quickly. And that could happen anytime. I've been impressed by Prescott an awful lot. He plays with a maturity that's way beyond his years. That said, he's still just a rookie.
Well, and in this case, the 8th player taken, right? I mean, this is a different kind of a look, and I guess it's been compared to the Bledsoe-Brady thing from 15 years ago, and certainly Romo's concession speech on Tuesday was unique. I mean, you don't ever see this happen. I mean, the good quarterbacks, the $20 million plus quarterbacks, there's a reason they are where they are, and unless you're Jay Cutler and you're getting benched every couple of years for something or another, most of the time you wait for the Savior to come back, and when the Savior comes back, you're happy to have him back.
Right, but this is, as you said, a completely unique situation. It's the closest thing we've had to Brady Bledsoe, since that happened, and that was completely unique unto itself. I mean, again, Dak Prescott is a wholly unique individual in his ability to handle situations, and I think one of the most important ones was his game against Philadelphia, where he played really poorly for 3 quarters, very, very poorly. The point where he threw an end zone interception, and I remember tweeting out at that moment, this is the reason why you go back to Tony Romo, because of what, the Eagles just did to Dak Prescott. This is one of the reasons why you go with the veteran. And then all of a sudden he gets it together and pulls it together in the 4th quarter, gets them into overtime, and they win that game. And that's the sign of an incredibly mature athlete who doesn't shell up in the moment when things are going bad. He's already learned, I'm going to be able to get through this valley, this situation, and we'll be all right. And of course, it helps that you have the best offensive line in football. You have the best, perhaps, running back in football right now, and you've got one of the top 3 or 4 wide receivers in the game in Des Bryant.
Well, and in Jerry Jones, you have the most active, hands-on, Trumpian sort of leader in the NFL, where all the shots are called by him, all the player personnel rolls through him. We have that in Baltimore under Peter Angelos. No one acknowledges it here, but at least in Dallas, they're pretty upfront about who's in the bus with the star in front of St. Elmo's draft week and who's calling the shots. And yet, the praise that gets thrown around for a complete offensive line, a running back that was a good call, not dealing with the Johnny Manziel circus 2 years ago when I know there was some, it was in Jerry's Texas DNA to want to have him around. But they have steered clear of a lot of this, and even the Greg Hardy nonsense they dealt with last year. This has been a pretty quiet, comfortable operation here, at least until now, and especially navigating the waters of having a franchise quarterback now take a back seat. Even that doesn't feel like it's created any sort of a gut punch. It's been a pretty nice little run here, and Jerry's not getting any of the credit, but I also don't see him stepping forth. He's been kind of quiet lately, right?
Well, it's always good when you win. You don't have to create the soap opera when you win. Soap opera only has to be created, and let's say this, Jerry loves some soap operas, and Romo is plenty of soap opera, but it only really has to be created and has to be paid attention to when you're losing, and you have to get somebody to say, well, there's a reason you should still pay attention to us even though we suck. It's because we've got great drama. This is not that case. They have all that people want to pay attention to in the fact that they are a good team, a really good team. Now, I still think that they're a buck short of Seattle and a buck short of the Patriots. But, they're a really strong team, especially on offense, and they've covered up their defense, which is not great, but they've covered it up very, very well.
Well, and they're playing for a position now, clearly, to be the place that Seattle's going to have to come, right? I mean, and play in January.
Everybody's going to have to come to in January. I mean, that's they have that in their wheelhouse because they don't have the strongest schedule in the world. That said, look, I wouldn't be surprised if the Ravens beat them. I mean, I think it's going to be a challenge for the Ravens, but I don't think that they're so far head and shoulders ahead of everybody that you just sit there and say, oh, yeah, they just have to show up and they should be able to win a game. Now, this is not like when Jimmy Johnson was coaching that team back in 92, 93, when they were loaded. And, they could show up against a mediocre to bad team, and they wouldn't even really have to game plan that much, and they knew they were going to win.
Well, they don't have any cream puffs left either. I mean, their easiest game might be a Tampa game or a Detroit game, but they're going to see the Redskins 4 days after they see us on Thanksgiving. They got to go to Minnesota. They got to go to the Meadowlands. They got to go to Philadelphia at the end of the year. They're not going to go 15-1, Jay. I mean, they're going to start losing some games.
I don't see that, but I think that they're capable of going 13-3. And in the NFC, or even 12-4, that may be good enough for the number one. It probably is going to be good enough for the number one overall seed, because I don't see anybody coming out of the North at much more than 10 or 11 wins. And if you look at the South, Atlanta or Tampa, or even New Orleans, I don't see them coming out with much more than 11 wins, right? The question is, can Seattle get there? And I think it's going to be tough for Seattle to get there.
Look, on our side of the fence, it feels like 9 wins is going to win this division at this point. For the Pittsburgh Steelers to get the 9, they have to go 5-2. I mean, I don't know that they're capable of 5-2 at this point. I think the Ravens are capable of 4-3, and certainly if the Ravens could go 5-2 and get to 10 wins, they win the division straight out. So this is really starting to be some nice math from the Ravens' perspective. But Christmas Day, they have to go to Pittsburgh, and then New Year's Day, they have to go to Cincinnati. There's no reason to believe this thing's going to get wrapped up early. There's going to be some nice drama here over the next 6 weeks. And for the first time, and Jason, I've been at this 21 years, the Ravens have not been in first place on Thanksgiving like ever. Maybe the 06 year when they went 13-3. They've always been the chaser, not the chasee in this division.
They play well from that post. I mean, they're a good chaser, and I remember the first year that they won the title. When their offense was so bad, and they just got it together in the second half of the season, that defense took off. I think they really liked being on the road. That game at Tennessee, they liked the challenge of going on the road in Tennessee. They liked the challenge of going to Oakland and shutting people up. I think that they played with that chip on their shoulder, and I think that they liked it. And I don't think that mentality has necessarily changed very much, even though, the coaches have changed and the players have changed, and, there's a whole different attitude. I think, a whole different group of people. I don't think the attitude is very much different.
Jason Cole joining us here, our dear friend from Bleacher Report. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Jason Cole BR, as well as the Cal-Stanford rivalry as it unfolds this weekend. So I got a story for you. I'm going to wheel this in. My wife's donor came in from Germany last week. We spent 10 days on the road. And in some strange way, a lot of weird things that weren't even on my bucket list happened. And one of them was on Wednesday morning, we flew up from Los Angeles to Oakland. I didn't even know where the Raiders facility was. Jay, I Googled it because
never been to Alameda, have you? Okay.
No. I mean, I've been to the Oakland airport a million times. I didn't realize their facility was at the foot of the runway. I just knew it was like somewhere on that side of the bay. I didn't know where it was, and we were a little time challenged. I had like 7 or 8 hours to show this kid San Francisco and get him on a cable car and show him Alcatraz and get him out to the Golden Gate Bridge and sort of wheel him around a little bit, get a little dim sum and all that stuff. And I didn't want to mess around like with a half a day at the Raiders complex. Jack Del Rio had us into the complex at 8 o'clock in the morning. I sat in his morning meeting, my wife and I and her donor, literally the team meeting with 53 players, all the coaches, the review tape. We sat in that meeting. I've never done that. I mean, I know these things exist. I've seen them on Hard Knocks and whatnot, but I've never been in one. I got to sit in to a full team meeting and a post breakdown of their win over the Broncos and the jackhammers and the great plays and the compliments that were paid and the getting ready for a Mexico City trip and making sure you're not drinking the water in Mexico City. all those things. We swabbed 44 Raiders for the bone marrow registry. But I'm going to tell you what, right now, there was some spirit in that Raiders building, and I can only imagine some dark days there over the last decade and a half where they haven't been 7-2 and they haven't kicked the Broncos' ass, but they really dominated the line of scrimmage offensively, and there was a sense of something building in there that they look like a really good football team right now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they've got that. To bring this back, I mean, I remember Ozzie saying one time, he says, if you have a great team, you have 4 or 5 guys that you have to pay them whatever it costs. You have to pay them whatever they demand because they're game-changing players, right? And then if you maybe got 6 to 10 other guys who are very good you got to negotiate with, and the rest of the guys you pay whatever, you say you're going to pay them, right? Well, you look at the Raiders, they've got 3 or 4 guys, you have to pay them what they demand. Khalil Mack, you're going to have to pay him what he demands. Derek Carr, you're going to have to pay him what he demands. Amari Cooper, at some point, you're going to have to pay him what he demands. Michael Crabtree, you already extended him and gave him a huge chunk of change. You've got a series of guys like that, and I think a defense that's growing in confidence because this defense was not very good at the beginning of the year. They got lit up by Atlanta. They got lit up by New Orleans, but they hung tough through it, and they played well through that. Now, I think that they're going to probably win that division, either them or Kansas City. I think they've got a game on December the 8th between those two. It's a Thursday night game. Unfortunately, a Thursday night game where both teams are going to be playing on a short week. But that's going to go a long way towards determining this division. I think the winner of that division is probably going to be 12-4. I think that Oakland has a really good chance to get there. And you're probably going to have 2 teams, one at 11-5, and another one at 10-6. And I think you're going to have 3 playoff teams come out of that division. And if one of them can knock off New England, then one of those teams I think is definitely going to the Super Bowl from the AFC. I think that those 3 teams have the best chance to challenge New England, but they're obviously going to have to go to New England because I think New England's not doing anything worse than, say, 13-3.
Well, we don't take Alex Smith seriously, right? But that defense has not taken a week off.
I take that team very seriously, and I take Alex Smith as this. He's not going to hurt you. The question is, he's going to help you. And, if everything is perfect around him, it's sort of like this. Again, to go back to when the Ravens won that championship the first time with Trent Dilfer at quarterback. Trent Dilfer wasn't a great quarterback. But at the time, given the number of great quarterbacks who had just retired and left the league, guys like Elway and Marino had just left the league, Steve Young had just left the league. There were a series of really great quarterbacks who were on the downside of their career. All of a sudden, Trent Dilfer was about a league average starter, I think is a good way of putting it. Over the second half of the season, he was right about 15th, 16th best starting quarterback at the time. And it's just at that time. Certainly, quarterback play has improved drastically over the last 15 years since that. We had a number of quarterbacks come into the division. But Alex Smith is what you could call a league average starter. He's sort of akin to what Trent Dilfer was at the time. So the question is, can you get through a playoff series of games? Especially, let's just assume that there's no Ben Roethlisberger and the best quarterback by far is Tom Brady. Maybe you've got Joe Flacco in there, Brock Osweiler, and then you've got Derek Carr, Alex Smith, and Trevor Siemian. Alex Smith may be the 3rd best guy in that group. He might be the 2nd best guy in that group, depending on how you look at it. And all you have to do is sort of get through, 2 games maybe if you win that division, if you're the number 2 seed. And can you do that? I mean, those things are all together possible. And this is a year where that could come together, and Alex Smith might have that chance because there's so much talent on the rest of that team. It's such a complete group.
And then you talk about these other quarterbacks. I mean, give me Phillip Rivers and Andy Dalton and Andrew Luck and Cam Newton and Aaron Rodgers. They're all going to be watching the playoffs this year, the way it looks.
Well, the way it looks, yeah. I mean, look, this is a nutty league. And again, if you tell me Green Bay ends up winning that division, I wouldn't be shocked. I just
They're only a game
yeah.
off, right? I mean, as bad as it feels like it did for the Ravens a couple weeks ago, you win a game or two, the other teams lose a game or two, they're in first place eating pumpkin pie next week somehow, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, Green Bay's got talent. The problem is they got some injuries, and I think they've got some. More importantly, they've got dissension. They've got issues between the players and the coaches, and between the coaches and the front office. Okay, so there's edginess within that team. There's no question about it. But when you have a guy like Aaron Rodgers, you can fix things in a hurry. And when you have a Cam Newton, you can fix things in a hurry. So if all of a sudden Atlanta and Tampa just die off and don't play very well, you could see Carolina making a little run and getting back into this thing. They won that division 2 years ago at 7-8-1. Now I know they won at 15-1, but I don't think that division's coming anywhere close to 15-1. I think the winner of that division is going to be a 10 or an 11-win team. So that's how that one's playing out. So it could happen where Tampa gets themselves back in this race, somehow finishes 9-7, and with a little bit of luck, maybe they win it, and you get another good quarterback. But most of those guys you're talking about are on the NFC side of the ledger. Again, on the AFC side of the ledger, I see that Alex Smith is not a guy who makes a team a whole lot better, but he won't make them worse. And that may be enough in a given year to get you through it and get you into a Super Bowl and maybe win it. He's, again, this era's version of a Trent Dilfer, this era's version of a Rob Johnson, that maybe that's enough to get you a victory.
He is Jason Cole. No one covers the NFL better than he does at Bleacher Report. You can follow him at Jason Cole, BR, as well on Twitter. Last thing for you, sort of a global thought here. We've heard so much bitching this year about officiating and replay, and Lord knows I spent a half an hour talking to Marvin Lewis about it the other night, and it feels like everything's sort of glacial about pass interference and replaying that, and the quality of play and the amount of flags, and what's a real call and what's a point of view or an opinion call for the league when it gets to the league offices. Yeah, in this, what's going to change in the future? What do you see being the big thing when we get together in March at the owners' meetings out in Arizona? What's going to be looked to get changed and made better from the mess we've had in the first half of this season?
Well, I'm a big advocate of defend your officials and support them, but also streamline some things. And I think that one thing that we've got to start talking about, and I think Marvin's big on this too, is Marvin talks about this as maintaining the integrity of the officials on the field control the game. I understand what he's saying, but I disagree from the fact that, look, this is still an entertainment product. And you want to keep people watching the game. And yeah, do you want to make sure that the calls are always right and that everything's done perfectly? Sure. Do you want to? But if you do that, sometimes it's going to take you 5 hours. If this game starts taking more than 3 hours and 15 minutes, 3.5 hours, 4 hours, guess what? People stop watching. So as much as we want to get all the calls right and make sure it's done perfectly and double-check calls and review this call and review that call and have a chance to stop and talk to the officials and question their judgment and all this other stuff, sometimes you have to say, if you want to keep the money flowing, if you want to keep the product entertaining, if you want to make sure that people are still, that they're not bored watching football games, you have to make sure that this is run quickly and effectively and efficiently as well.
And get the call right in the end. I mean, if that's the whole goal, you got to get the call right.
You got to get the call right. I understand that. But there's, sometimes, like, you sit there and you watch them talking about a call and then throwing the flag and then talking. Like, that's boring. Like, refs are like great waiters. If you don't notice them, they're doing a fabulous job. But when you start to notice the waiter, you notice the waiter because the service is bad. You notice the waiter because they don't show up at your table. You notice the waiter because they bring things late or it's cold or they're incompetent and they forget what the order was. Those are all the things. It's the same principle with officials. And when we pay too much attention to officials, we start to lose sight of what's the most important thing, and that is the players and the players playing the game. And yes, sometimes that means you have to live with judgment calls. and live with judgment calls that you may or may not agree with, or you may or may not have to live with, because you don't get to replay every single play in a game.
He is Jason Cole doing the good work at Bleacher Report and Jason Cole BR on Twitter. Always a pleasure to check in with you. Good luck to the Cardinal out there this weekend, and good vibes. I'll be following you on Twitter as I always do. Whatever you do, be clever. That's all I'm asking. Be clever.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
You have to do that. All right. Thanks, Nestor.
Love you for that. Jason Cole from Bleacher Report joining us here, and we'll be following Stanford and Cal, as well as our journey to Dallas on Sunday for the Cowboys and the Ravens. Full coverage coming your way. Luke's on the backfields between now and then, and anything you miss here, you can find in the Buy a Toyota audio vault at WNST.net. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, everywhere we go, you go. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.